Okay, Rabbi Say, let's get rolling. Number 2 in Hilchos Aveilus, really number 3 actually. All right, Dina Aveilus. So we have a halacha that an avel does not stand up for a Talmud Chacham that walks into the room. He doesn't stand up, but he does do usually the little shuffle, a little half stand, just not to be mevaz of the Talmud Chacham, but he doesn't actually stand. That's the minhag. Now the Aruch HaShulchan says that we didn't really discuss yet in detail the Isser of learning Torah, but we all know the Isser of Avel learning Torah. The Aruch HaShulchan makes a Kal V'chomer. If you can't learn Torah, you can't learn any other Chachmos as well. Although the Kal V'chomer is not so pashid, because the reason for Torah is Pekudei Hashem Yishar Mesamchei Leiv, whereas newspapers and other Chachmos and etc. might not be Mesamchei Leiv. But L'maisa, the Aruch HaShulchan still says if we're not going to let him learn Torah, he can't do other chachmas, no newspapers, no magazines, etc. That write-up on the nifter, that he could definitely read. So when the magazine does a write-up, or the newspaper, the obituary, or whatever is on the nifter, that's what it's all about. That you could definitely do. But the stam magazines, stam newspapers, that would not be allowed. The Shulchan Aruch says, halacha that we all know, that the aval is not allowed to sit on a chair. Rather, he should sit on the floor. Now, at first glance, you read the Shulchan Aruch like, wait a second, the Shulchan doesn't say small chair. The Shulchan Aruch says he should sit on the floor. The Shach's a little nicer, I guess. The Shach says the aval, he shouldn't sit on a regular chair. Rather, he should sit on a small pillow. If he's like a chayla. If he's a chayla, he could sit on a small pillow, which still doesn't sound so geschmack. The Maisa, the Aruch HaShulchan, and the Gesher Chaim later bring down that the minhag in Klal Yisrael has become that we sit on a low chair. I guess we became weak. We're not so simple for us to sit on the floor. But it happens to be, I've gone to some shivas of very stark, hardcore Talmidei Chacham type families in Eretz Yisrael. I've never seen it in America. But in Eretz Yisrael, where they sit on the floor, or maybe a little mat on the floor, and that's what they do. In America, I've never seen that. It's definitely the normal practice that we sit, even in Eretz Yisrael, it's a normal practice that they sit on low chairs. Many of the places can bring down that the chairs should be under 3 tvachim in height. The Chazon Ish, and it's good to know this heter if need be, the Chazon Ish says it's not an Inyan tape measures if it's under 3 tvachim or not under 3 tvachim. It just has to be a chair that's noticeably a short chair. Once it's noticeably a short chair, that is good enough. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan brings down that an old or sick person or pregnant lady who it's difficult to sit on a short chair could just go and sit on a regular chair. So, meaning just each person has to judge by the degree of difficulty. If it's crazy difficult, you don't have to put the Alta Bubby onto this little small chair. She could sit on a regular chair. Interesting that when the Aveilus make a zimun between themselves, a zimun of Aveilus, you add in the words Menachem Aveilim before Shalchanam Mishaloi, before Bar Shalchanam Mishaloi, before the word Shalchanam Mishaloi, you add in the words Menachem Aveilim. Now, something that not everybody knows, the Aval needs a shomer. Just like, a chasen before the chasana needs a shomer, the Aval needs a shomer. The Aval is not supposed to go by himself. And you could understand, it makes a lot of sense. This is a time where there's not a very good mazel for him, and it's a very dangerous time, so to speak, and therefore he needs a shomer. Now, one avel could be a shomer for the other avel, not a problem. So anyways, the Avelim are usually together most of the time. Usually, most of the time, there's multiple Avelim together, so it's pretty simple. But sometimes, they could be sleeping down the block or whatever it is. They shouldn't go by themselves. There should be a shomer with them. Davening. Now, there is a mitzvah to make a minyan at the shiva. So when there's a shiva there, there's a minyan. There's a mitzvah inyan to make a minyan there. Something that people don't realize, even if there's no avelim, if the person was nifter in the house, not in the hospital, if the person was nifter in the house, then there's an inyan to make minyanim in that house as well. Now, if there's no avelim, it's usually very difficult to pull, 3 minyanim for a week or whatever, but you should definitely try, it'd be the right thing as a neighbor, as whatever, to try to make at least one minyan in that house, because there's definitely an inyan, because the neshama stays around in that house during that tkufa, and even if there's no Aveilus, let's say the Aveilus are overseas, etc., you should try to make a minyan in that house. And Aval doesn't say karbanis, neither do a lot of other people. Outside of saying the carbon atomid and ezu mukamim. Now, what about Birchas Kahanim? So in Chutzlar, it's the Kain of Velikev that we do not say in the base of Aval. In Eretz Yisrael, there's all different minhagim floating around. Some people, usually the minhag in most places is to argue whether or not you say Birchas Kahanim or you don't. And I'm not here to be machriya that. I think that minhag will continue. I saw different quotes from everybody and different. It's just a big split and different minhagim, and it seems to be most of them say it's totally a minhag. So I didn't get clarity. There is no tachnon in a shiva house. On laning days, you don't say kel arach apayim before we take out the Sefer Torah. The lametzeach before Aval Tziyun we don't say. On Rosh Chodesh we don't say halal in a shiva house. L'chatchila one should say it by himself afterwards. Somebody who's visiting. The Aveilus don't say it. The minhag is to say lametzeach v'nei koirach, which is the 49th kapitel of Tehillim, after Shachris, and some places they do it after Mincha, some places after Maariv, maybe a Minna, Nusach Svar, Nusach Ashkenaz difference. A Sefer Torah should be brought to a Shiva's house for laning on the Monday and Thursday. Now, it's not so simple moving around the Sefer Torah. Some say that to move around the Sefer Torah, you need to lane with it 3 times. And therefore, some people are makbid that in the Shiva house to make a minyan on Shabbos Mincha, and therefore you're going to have 3 lanings. If there wasn't, let's say, a Rosh Chodesh or a fast day or something like that fell out on other days, so if you didn't get those 3, so some people are noyig to have a minyan there for Shabbos Mincha. However, other poskim say this. You can only move a Sefer Torah if you can use it 3 times. That's one of those famous halachas that it doesn't say anywhere. What is the makar of it? Nobody knows. So nobody knows where the makar of it is. It doesn't actually say it in any earlier, but everybody knows this halacha. So there's 2, when you have those types of halachas, there's 2 different approaches to those types of halachas. One of the approaches to those types of halachas is, if it doesn't say it anywhere, it's not true. And therefore we don't have to care about it. The other approach is, if everybody says it in Klal Yisrael, there must be a real makar for it, and Klal Yisrael, it's a minhag Yisrael already, and therefore we have to keep it. So these are different approaches. Now, usually you don't really need it anyways, because the first question is, what type of Sefer Torah are we talking about? If you're talking about taking the Sefer Torah out of the shul or in Kodesh, it's much more chomer. You're moving it from its place, from being in the shul or in Kodesh. If you're taking a Sefer Torah that it's a gemacht Sefer Torah for Shiva houses, you're not taking it away from anywhere. This is where it's supposed to be. And if this is where it's supposed to be, there's no thing, how could you move it here? It's exactly where it is supposed to be. So if it's, you got it from Misaskim, this Sefer Torah, because they came with the truck to deliver all the stuff, or you got it from the Shiva house Gemach, then you certainly don't have to be makbid about that 3rd mincha time. And there's another svar in the Poskim that if in the Shiva house it has an Aron Kodesh, one of those small Aron Kodeshes in the Shiva house, then once again you don't have to be worried, because it's not that you moved it away from. This is a proper place. Some of the poskim say that when it is in a Aron Kodesh, it's not considered moved away from it went from one proper place to another proper place, and therefore even if it wasn't leaned 3 times, it's okay. So l'meisa b'pashtus, you don't have to worry about that minyan for Shabbos Mincha, but for those machmirim that want to, they could. Fine. The important point also, the Aval shouldn't get a aliyah. The Aval could get psicha, hagba, or glila. Just a side point. I'm going to get soon to the chiv of davening for the amid, etc. It's very interesting. The mechaber brings down. If nobody else knows how to daven, so the aval could daven for the amid. It seems that the Ramah is a little bit more into the aval davening, but seeing from the lashon of the mechaber, it's very striking. If nobody else knows how to, he'll be able to. Whereas now we know, it's the greatest chiv in the world. Sorry, we're going to have to get to that, but I thought it was very strange and striking. The aval doesn't say pitim keteris. I guess its pattern is not working on Aveilus. The aval doesn't say pitim keteris. The aval, what about kiddush levana? So it depends. If it works out that the aval will probably be able to say kiddush levana after the Aveilus, there's a nice bunch of days. It's not a foggy season, So then the aval does not say kiddush levana during Aveilus. But if the aval is not going to have a chance, or very likely won't have a chance to say kiddush levana after Aveilus, then the aval does say kiddush levana. Now there is a machlokes in the poskim whether or not you say Shalom Aleichem to the aval, and whether the aval says Shalom Aleichem back to the other people, because there's the Isser, which we discussed in a minute, of Shelas Shalom. And the machlokes, L'maisa, most poskim are mekel, because they say this is not really Shelas Shalom. It's just kind of part of the Kiddush Levana procedure. So L'maisa, we could be mekel. But you know what? If I'm there, and I don't know if I'm going to dafka go over to the aval to be the one to say Shalom Aleichem to, or I get involved in the Sheila, but the Maisa, most poskim are mekel. Now, let's just go weiter with the Sheila Shalom that we started discussing. So there's the Isser Sheila Shalom. You shouldn't ask Shalom Aleichem shouldn't say Shalom Aleichem to the aval. Why not? So this is a well-known Isser. It's from the Gemara already. But the reason is really not very clear. The Bari Shulchan brings down a reason. The aval is not in a shalom dika positive situation. So when you say Shalom Aleichem to the aval, or how you doing, it's like you're making fun of his situation. It's like you see the guy, schlepping the groceries back from the supermarket. The guy who doesn't have a car. And you say, yeah, what happened? Did you couldn't find the keys to your Porsche? It's making fun of his situation, he's not in a Shalom Dika situation. Don't say, how are you? Don't say Shalom Aleichem. But L'maisa, it's hard to understand, because I would have understood Shalom Aleichem, or how you doing? These are comforting things to say, or brachos. I wouldn't really understood it as making fun of him, but maybe. Another pshat that I saw was it was the Bir Halacha quoted somebody, I don't remember anymore who the Bir Halacha quoted, but the Bir Halacha quoted somebody that says that Hashem gave this person a midas hadin. He wasn't judging this person and putting this person into a shalom dikamatzav. And it's like a little apikarsis type. You're going against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You're fighting a Kadosh Baruch Hu. A Kadosh Baruch Hu says this person is in a midas din dikamatzav, and you're saying, oh no, you should be in a shalom dikamatzav. Also a little bit hard to understand, because we're meant to give people brachos and wish them a positive, good situation. So it's a little bit difficult to understand. But whatever, the reasoning is a little difficult to understand. But l'maisa, we all agree there's an isser of she'elas shalom. Now, what about other words where you're not using the name shalom of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, rather you're using let's say English words like hi, like hello. So good morning, goodbye, right? All these different things. Greetings, how's it? Yeah, all these things. What about them? So, if you actually learn coming from the Shulchan Aruch, from the Sugya, you wouldn't think to answer these different wordings. But L'maisa, the poskim bring down that the minhag has become, not the original Isser, but the minhag has become to answer all these different greetings as well. And but what's the reason? What does hello Have any, if you're going to give those last two reasons that I said, hello has nothing to do with the last two reasons. You're not making fun of the guy's situation. You're not saying that he should have a shalom dikas matziv. So, what shaykhs? So the poskim try to various lashonis, but they seem to boil down to these are greeting replacements. These are shalom aleichem replacements. So any shalom aleichem or greeting replacement fits into that isser. Once again, not maker adin, but the minhag, which is once again not the easiest to understand, but that's how we paskin. Now, even though we don't allow greetings, we do allow brachos. So you could say to the aval, or the aval could say to somebody else, Mazel tov. You're giving him a bracha. It's a bracha. It's not a greeting. Next time I see you, we should share in simchas. That seemingly is okay. You're allowed to give brachas, but no, if they're not greeting based. Now, nodding the head is allowed. A handshake is allowed. On Shabbos, we do say Shalom Aleichem, because not saying Shalom Aleichem or Good Shabbos is really, I guess, the more fitting thing. On Shabbos, you're allowed to say Good Shabbos, or I guess if you say Shabbat Shalom, you should probably be able to say even Shabbat Shalom, if you're a Shabbat Shalom type of guy, because not doing so will be Aveilus b'farhesya. Now, if someone says Shalom Aleichem to the Aval, what is the Aval meant to do? So if it's in the first 3 days of the Aveilus, which is the highest, much more strict level, then the Aval is not even allowed to respond. He should just say, I'm not allowed to respond to the greeting. Or you're not allowed to ask me the greeting and I can't respond. It has to be abrupt like that. After the first 3 days of Aveilus, the Aval is allowed to answer back, oh, I'm doing great, Shalom Aleichem to you, or Aleichem Shalom, or something of the sort. He is allowed to respond, even though it wasn't proper that he was asked. He doesn't have to blow the guy off. Once again, if it's the type of person that has the right relationship, where it's not difficult to, explain him it's his very close nephew who he has it's not awkward for him to explain to him the halacha. It's probably a better thing to do. But after day 3, if it's awkward for him to not respond, he would be allowed to respond. Now, one thing that's interesting is that one actually shouldn't greet the aval up until the shloshim. A lot of people don't know this. You're not supposed to say Shalom Aleichem to the aval all the way to the shloshim. You're not supposed to say. However, the aval is allowed to greet somebody else after the shiva and before the shloshim. Now, it goes even so far that there's strong basis in halacha, and it's actually most achronim go this way, to say that you shouldn't even greet an aval the entire year, which I believe is certainly not the minhag. The Ramah already says that the minhag is to be mekel, and we do greet an aval from the shloshim on, and there's a Magen Avram and a slew of other achronim who argue on the Ramah and say that no, the din is the entire year. The halach is you're not allowed to greet an aval. He has a din Aveilus the entire year. Meichatesi, you could greet him. Lemaisa, once again, the Ramah says the minhag. The modern day poskim say it certainly is the minhag that we do greet an aval from shloshim on. However, I do think there is a, it's hard to keep this in mind, but there is a maila if somebody wants to be machmir of saying to an aval, keeping it to, hello, how you doing? What's up? How's everything? What's up, bro? How's everything? Whatever other good mornings, and not use the word Shalom Aleichem. Not use because the ikar problem, as we discussed previously, is the Shalom Aleichem, is that type of using the Shem Hashem, using the Shalom to greet somebody. So there definitely is a maila of not using the Shalom Aleichem terminology for the aval the entire year. Once again, if somebody does, there's definitely a Ramah to be saimach on. Now, another thing that people don't realize, non-Avelim shouldn't greet each other inside a shiva house. Inside a shiva house, even from non-aval to non-aval, there shouldn't be a Shalom Aleichem. Which is, by the way, difficult because Shiva House is a common place where people meet people that they haven't seen for a long time. It's very common. So that's what makes it a little tricky. Yeah. Okay, now on to...
Din in the base Ovel?
Yes. Now, there is a Isser Rechitza during Shiva. During Shiva, one cannot wash his body, his entire body, even in, not one, I mean the Aval is who I'm referring to. He can't wash his entire body, even in cold water. And he can't wash even his hands, feet, and face with warm water. He could wash his hands, feet, and face with cold water. There is a little debate whether the feet still have the are included in the allowance, because in places where people wear shoes, the pashtus they still do, because feet I think are part of the body gets smelly, whatever. I think the pashtus the allowance still exists, but there are some places that aren't so convinced. Definitely, if you're of a sandal wearing society, then it for sure still applies without question. Okay. Now, what type of water do we mean when we say cold water? That you wash yourself with cold water. It doesn't need to be frigid, freezing water. If the water from the tap is, you can add a little warm water. Now, how much? What up to what point? So the way that Rabbi Elyashiv is megader it, he said up until the point where you don't feel the warmth of it. I mean, you're just taking away the frigidness, but there's no geschmack of warmth from it. And that is what you could do. Now the Shulchan Aruch continues and says, this is where it gets tricky. But to remove dirt, you're allowed to shower. Okay, so what exactly are these two situations of showering? You're generally not allowed to shower, but to remove dirt, you're allowed to shower, right? So some people want to come and say that nowadays, any of these little dirt that we have here and there, we sweat a little bit, and therefore that little bit that we sweat, that's dirt, and therefore you're allowed to shower, no problem. I think that's not so convincing, because the Lashon Shulchan Aruch is, if you have tit v'tsoya on your body, you're allowed to shower. Tit v'tsoya. Tit is some type of cement or something like that. Tsoya, mud, whatever. And tsoya is excrement. This sounds like a pretty nasty situation. I don't know. It's not stam. It sounds like. So if it's not stam, like that, you could. I would say we don't have to get to the madrega of tit v'tsoya nowadays, because I think our level of hygiene is we have a much greater level of hygiene than they had back then, during this time of the Shulchan Aruch. So I agree we're not the same. But I think even then, I assume, I could be wrong, I'm assuming tit v'tsoya is a pretty decent level of nastiness. It's not just, didn't say a little dirt, So I think it needs to be something significant. But it's very difficult to get the cutoff point. So I would say like this. If somebody's very sweated up, and he feels smelly, then Avadi L'chari could shower and get rid of that. He could shower and get rid of that very sweatedness and smelliness. If somebody's just a little discomfort, I could really use a shower, then I would say L'chari he definitely cannot do. The problem is going to be that whole big gray area in between, where maybe I'm a little smelly, or maybe I'm a little sweated up, and it's hard to know how to compare what tit v'tsoya was bisman Shulchan Aruch to what it is nowadays, and it might really even depend nowadays which sub-community you're part of. I'm not convinced that every culture, in Eretz Yisrael, in England, in South Africa, in America, I'm not convinced it's all the same in all these places either. So it's going to be very difficult to be megader, to give guidelines as to what degree of discomfort or smelliness or dirt we need to qualify for this. So I can't give any clear gedarim because it's just difficult. Okay. There is a halacha that istinus which is a very sensitive person, is allowed to shower. Now, some people throw around the line that we're all istanesses nowadays. I'm not so convinced about that. I agree that we're all, if you would stick all of us into, 300 years ago, then we would all be considered istanesses of those days. But I think istiness is a relative thing. I think there's plenty of people here that could manage without showering for 2 days or 3 days. 7 days, it's very difficult in economy. I guess it depends on the person. The poskim seem to be megader istiness as somebody who's specifically like squeamish. Somebody specifically needs, the person who, when you come into their house, they ask you to wash their hands. Take off your shoes, wash your hands. So you shower every night. So every single night, wash your hands when you come in. No, the kids just came from the park, get their clothes off before. That if you have that type of mindset, then maybe you qualify as an istiness. But to say that everybody's an istiness, I'm not so convinced. Okay. And by the way, even the istiness shouldn't shower on the first day of Aveilus, which, by the way, usually is not so practical. The first day is usually half a day. It's usually just a couple hours from whenever the Levaya ends until Shkia is the first day. A woman who is within 30 days after childbirth, she's already has a din of a chayla to some degree, and if she feels that she needs to shower, she is allowed to shower. A sick or weak person also may shower, but once again, they shouldn't shower on the first day. A woman who is an aval doesn't go to the mikvah. A man who is an aval, even if he normally is toivel to feel his carry or whatever it is, he does not go to the mikvah. A woman is allowed to wash up before a hefsek tahara. Now the Ramah brings the minhag that rechitza is aser for an aval up to the shloshim. Now there's a fight in the achronim whether aval is allowed to take a shower in cold water before the shloshim. Lamaisa, nowadays all the poskim are mekel that we could take cold showers before the shloshim, because nowadays for us that would be a big problem. So, and soap and shampoo are also allowed before the shloshim. By the way, this is a minhag Ashkenaz. The Sephardim don't have this minhag. Sephardim could take a hot shower after the shiva. The poskim bring a whole list of exceptions to not taking a hot shower before the shloshim. Before a bris, the parents, the mayol, the sandik, could take a shower. Before a pidyon haben, the parents, the kayin. Before a engagement, the chassan and kala. Before a wedding, the chassan, kala, parents could all shower. Before a date, the two people could shower. If the shloshim is on Shabbos, you could take the hot shower on Friday. When you're going to the mikvah, a man could go into a hot mikvah. L'chayr, that means when there's one mikvah, which is a hot mikvah. If there's a hot mikvah and a cold mikvah, l'chayr, the man has to go for the cold mikvah. But if there's a hot mikvah and if there's only a hot mikvah, he could use the hot mikvah, but he can't hang out there. He can't find out the latest real estate deal in there. He has to just go in and go out. Yeah. There's different mikvahs. Different things go on in different mikvahs. Swimming for enjoyment is a problem before the shloshim. Swimming for exercise is okay. A pregnant woman or somebody for medical reasons that needs to take a hot shower, then they could. During shloshim, now we're going to go into cutting nails. Up until the shloshim, one is not allowed to cut their nails. That includes fingernails and toenails. You can't file your nails up until the shloshim, and it's a pretty long time not to cut your nails. However, you're allowed to bite your nails or tear your nails with your fingers. Now, before the shloshim, if a woman needs to cut her nails for the purposes of a chafifa, she should ask somebody else to cut her nails. Now, at first glance, that sounds weird, but then if you think about it, there's something called a manicure. So it's not so weird to have somebody else cut your nails. If for whatever reason that's not an option, then the woman could cut her own nails. If a male needs to cut his nails, the place we were all talking about a male cutting his nails, I didn't know what they were talking about. I actually messaged a a mile today to find out what this was. What are they all talking about? So I found out that the Priya, which is the initial stages of the Mila, is done with the fingernail. I didn't know that before today. And that's what the place we're talking about, mile. I didn't, okay. New info for me today. So a mile apparently needs to cut his fingernail to the right length to do the Priya. And therefore, if there's no other mile available, then the mile could cut his fingernail to do the Mila. If there are other milim available, so then he cannot. However, if it's his parnasa to do Mila, then after the Shiva, before the Shloshim, he could cut his nails. I saw I'm just quoting this because this is my job in my previous Matzah Bura. The Steichem, it says that someone is allowed, a hired matzah kneader is allowed to cut his nails before, or the shloshim preferably should have somebody else do it, but if nobody else is available to do it, he could do it himself. The hired Lamaisa, we use gloves, so it's not really a big issue anyways. Now, let's talk about haircuts for a second. So, as we pointed out, one cannot get a haircut. One cannot cut the hair, of their beard, of their body for the full shloshim. Now, if their mustache is getting in the way of their eating, it's annoying, it's interfering, then they could trim their mustache so it doesn't get in the way of their eating. Now, for a parent where the Aveilus is more than just the 30 days, it's the full year. So even after the shloshim ends, one cannot get a haircut or shave right away. Until when? When do they have to wait for? They have to wait until somebody, their friend, tells them, "You look really bad. You need a haircut. Get a haircut, please." So when their friend goes and tells them to get a haircut, only then could they get a haircut. Now, not everybody knows this, and sometimes nobody's telling them, and they're just waiting for somebody to hear. The Avel can't go over to you and say, "Please tell me to get a haircut." It has to come from somebody else who's going to tell them, "You need a haircut, go get a haircut." So if you see an Avel 2 months after, looks horrible, tell him to get a haircut. Now, what if nobody tells him to get a haircut? So the person can say after 3 months, then he could already get a haircut. Now, Lamaisa, if it's a desperate situation, then he could start the 3-month count from his last haircut, not just from when he became an Avel. Now, it seems that most poskim hold that this isn't just the first haircut. This halacha pertains to the entire year. So even after his first haircut, somebody should again tell him, after however long, "You need a haircut, get another haircut." And if nobody tells him, another 3 months. L'maisa, if it's Simcha ben Kohen brings a possibility that it's twice the amount of time that you normally wait for a haircut. So if you normally wait 1 month for a haircut, you'd be able to go up until 2 months. L'maisa, if it's not simple, it's not pashut, you need to get a haircut, work, etc., whatever, one could rely on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, Makam Tzarech, that you only have to wait a month before getting a haircut. What about shaving? Shaving, after the first time that you shave, we're not as machmer as we are with the haircut. And Simcha ben Kohen quotes from Moshe Feinstein that you have to wait up till 2 times the normal amount of time that you normally wait to shave. So if you're a once-a-week shaver, you should shave once every 2 weeks. If you're a twice-a-week shaver, you should shave once a week. And once again, fine. Now, a married woman has the same halachas apply. She shouldn't take a haircut until somebody tells her that she needs to take a haircut, which would probably be her husband. But when it comes to married women, usually the long hair isn't a disgustingness for them, so it's not such a big deal. However, if their long hair is getting in their way, it's sticking out of the sheitel, it's hard, makes the sheitel uncomfortable or whatever, then they could cut their hair whenever. Now, what about different body parts? So the place would say a married woman could shave those or whatever, laser or whatever it is she does to those other parts of the body, so she shouldn't be disgusting in her husband's eyes. So that she should look good for her husband, she is allowed to. And the place can also bring down that a A girl who's in shidduchim age, she could certainly be makel on a lot of these things. Even a boy who's in shidduchim age could be more makel on some of these stuff. Also, if a girl's going to be embarrassed about, let's say, hairy legs or something like that, she could shave it as well. So the Ma'aseh the halacha applies to women as well, but by the time you're done with all the carve-outs and all the exceptions, you're really taking care of most of the situations. Now, also, if somebody has to cut their hair for medical reasons, that is allowed, and that is it for this week's Hilchos Aveilus. Thank you for joining me.